Would you please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Toss out the window.
All right, before we begin the agenda, I'm gonna ask, Town Administrator has a statement that he's gonna read.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're all aware of the tragic incident that occurred in town yesterday with a police officer-involved shooting. Our thoughts and prayers are with our officers, our firefighters who were on the scene, as well as the decedent and his family. District Attorney Marion Ryan and her team were here all day yesterday, and they will do a full investigation. There will be no further comment on this matter until that time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Okay, I'm gonna start with the agenda, item 377, it's approval for voting equipment change. Mrs. Warfield.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Amy Warfield. I'm the town clerk. This is a procedural thing we have to do whenever we replace our election equipment, that the select board votes to accept and notify the Secretary of State's office of the change in the election equipment.
Thank you, Mrs. Warfield. Just for a point of order for the meeting, due to the fact we have one member who's attending remotely, all votes tonight need to be taken by roll call. So, Amy, is that it, or is it?
That's really it. You were given the motion and the vote that you have to sign, and then also signing that letter for the Secretary of State's office. I will send both of those things off to the Secretary of State tomorrow if you choose to sign them.
Thank you, Amy. Any questions from the board? Mr. Hogan?
Amy, good evening, and I suppose, will the voting public in April notice anything that's going to cause any consternation when they go in to vote?
Well, the process is really the same. It's still paper ballots that they fill out the oval on and they feed it into the machine. The machine will look different. It's got a bigger video display on it so the people can actually see that their ballot has been accepted. They're not reading the ballot, but they just see there's more notation to the voter. The other thing that is going to change too is that we are going to try, we have purchased some new, what are called poll pads. They're electronic check-in devices. Anybody who has done early voting is familiar with them. We've been using them for 2 years now with early voting, but we will now have those in each precinct at the polls. So hopefully it'll speed up the check-in, check-out process for our voters.
All right, and thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Hogan. Mr. Priest?
None for me, thank you.
Mr. Morandi?
None.
Mr. Runyon?
All set.
Okay, Amy, I do have one quick question. I know there were issues with some of the ballots getting jammed in the machine. Do you think this might help with that issue, or?
Yeah, it'll help. That's one of the biggest changes is that these machines, not only are they newer, so the mechanics on them are newer and more up to date, but they've also worked on processes that do help with all the folded ballots. The more we get vote by mail ballots, those are all pre-folded. And so we have to flatten them out. These machines are a little bit better at handling all of those ballots as well. So we hope to eliminate some of the jamming problems that we've had.
Thank you, Amy. No further discussion. Are we looking for a motion from?
Yeah, I'm happy to read the motion as it was provided to us. As required by general laws, chapter 54, section 34, I move that the town of Burlington is to start using the ImageCast precinct optical scan tabulator and discontinue the use of the AccuVote tabulator.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Morandi. Okay, again, this is a roll call vote. And I will ask you to make sure I do that because I may forget.
Yes.
Roll call. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Aye.
Yes.
Right. Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
And the chair is yes, 500. All set, Amy?
Thank you once again, gentlemen.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, item 378 is an appointment. Mr. DePel. Thank you, Honorable Board. Mr. Sagarino.
I'm here tonight to seek an affirmative appointment for Joe Mirabella as the new plumbing and gas inspector. As you may know, that Glenn Papero, the plumbing and gas inspector for the past 25 years about, recently retired. We posted the advertisement and along with Joanne and Human Resources. We had 15 applicants for the position. We interviewed 4 people. Joe stood out among those 4. He's been a licensed plumber for 35 years. He's been an inspector in Haverhill for the last 5 years. And I'm asking for your favorable appointment.
Thank you, Mr. DePel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and with Mark's recommendation, I appoint Joseph Mirabella to the position of Plumbing and Gas Inspector in the Burlington Business Department and ask that the board waive its 15-day waiting period.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Mr. Hogan.
Yes.
Mr. Priest.
Yes.
Mr. Morandi.
Yes.
Mr. Runyon.
Yes.
And the chair's a yes. 500 to waive the 15-day waiting period. Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item 379, discussion and approval, potential approval for demo permit fee increase. Mr. Runyon. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I think, we had discussed this at one of our previous meetings, and the board had a couple of questions for Mr. Dupel prior to that. I know this is something that was brought to us by Member Runyon. And so we have Mark here tonight to answer any of the board's questions so that you can finish up your discussion on the matter.
All right, so I'll start with Mr. Hogan. Do you have any questions?
I think one of the questions or concerns came up last time is, where does this $1,000 go each time and who controls use of it or whatever?
I can answer that. Select Board Member Hogan. At present, this is general fund revenue. So if this is approved by the board, John and I will have to work together to determine what the best financial mechanism is to sort of carry out the purposes of what the board intended to happen with this. And I think I had sent a descriptive email in response to a resident that sort of described a couple of different ways to do it. And I think that we'll be looking, in my view, to try to provide resources to the housing partnership as soon as possible. So whatever I can work out with the finance team in terms of allocating those funds in the upcoming budget year, that would be my goal, to provide the funding as quickly as possible for their use.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Priest.
I don't think I had any questions. I'm comfortable with the $1,000 increase, knowing that it was for a full demo. I know that last time I brought up the question, like if someone was going to do like a partial tear down and a rebuild.
So I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. Did you have, Mr. Sagarino?
Mark, could you mind just explaining to us the demolition permit and what is encompassing from that? And is that for a full demolition, partial demolition? When does the demolition permit come into play?
So we do a full demo permit when it's the removal of a structure, say like a building or a complete house for a tear down, a barn, stuff like that. If you have to remove part of your house to put an addition on, that demo is part of the building permit, so it's not considered a separate demo permit. Same thing with commercial buildings. If they're gutting a floor to put in a new tenant, that demo is part of the building permit. We don't require a demo permit for that because it's not structural in nature.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morandi. Mr. Runyon, comments or questions?
No, I believe Mark answered. I think that's what we're really hung up on, the definition of demolition. And I think he's I think he's sort of set the record straight on that, a complete demolition versus any partial demolition or internal demolition will simply require the standard building permit. So we're probably just talking about the 50 or so complete house demolitions that we've been seeing as an average year over year.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Okay, that being said, I have no comments on it. I'll be looking for a motion to approve the increase of the demo permit to, I believe, $1,000. Is that correct?
So moved.
It's moved
Moved
by
by
Mr.
Mr.
Hogan,
Second.
second by Mr. Priest. Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Morandi?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
And the chair is yes, 500 on that increase.
Thank you.
Mr. DeVal.
Thank you.
Okay, item 380 is green communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've invited Rachel Leonardo from the Public Works Department to give the board an update on the Green Communities Program. And Rachel's in the virtual meeting. Rachel, go ahead. You want to take it away?
Take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to give a brief update from the projects that we've completed thus far. We just submitted our first annual report that encompassed the past 18 months of projects. So in 2020, we did the fire headquarters HVAC, we did the new rooftop units on the library, as well as controls and weatherization. We did the LED lighting in all of the buildings in the town, along with the schools. We installed our first electric vehicle charging station at Town Hall, and we did the rooftop units at 61 Center Street, the Human Services Building. And all of these projects were about $1 million, and I believe at the end of it, we paid $140,000. So we had a really great first year. Year two, we're about to close out. So this year, we've done more fire headquarters work. We've done weatherization, and we installed some ERVs for air efficiency. We've weatherized 5 of our 6 schools, and I believe the school department budgeted a warrant article to do the high school on their own. And we got a Green Communities grant that we competed for. It was about $154,000. And then we got another grant from ARPA for $100K. So all the projects that we've done in 2021 have been completely covered by other parties and incentives. And after all said and done, in our first 18 months, we're trying to get to 20% energy reduction in the town in 5 years, and we have hit 6.9%. So I'd call that a success.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, this is up for discussion. Mr. Hogan, any questions for Rachel?
No, I have no questions. I just think they are doing a wonderful job on our behalf, on the town's behalf. So thank you, guys.
Priest?
Yeah, I echo what Selectman Hogan is saying. You know, the fact that all those projects netted us at 140K is extremely impressive from a financial standpoint. And, you know, we're striving to make things more eco-friendly and sustainable, which is great. So keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Mr. Randy?
Thank you, Rachel. You do a wonderful job. Thank you very much. I'm afraid to say anything.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, I would just like to add my voice to the choir. It's always nice to see Rachel at our meetings because it always means good news. So again, thank you very much and keep up the good work.
And I just want to echo it too, Rachel. Thank you for making us look good. So,
Thank you. Thank you all.
okay, item 381, introduction to the town assessor. Mr. Sheen, you want to bring your gang up here or?
Deemed necessary. Just introduce everybody for the board, or for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Paul Sheehan, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Here with my colleague Kathy, and remotely is Kevin Sheehan.
Hold on. The Board of Selectmen says here.
Chairman of the Board of the Assessors.
Change seats. Past Assessor, Mr. Doherty, is here. We're here for a couple of reasons. Number one, to introduce our new appraiser assessor. His name is Paul Tierney, out of Arlington, Director of Assessments there, with several years' experience prior to that in Winthrop and Salem. Just through HR and the process that we followed through interviews and reference checking, we narrowed it down to 3 candidates. did a substantial amount of interviewing. And obviously reference checks and followed up and finally selected, and he accepted Paul Tierney. So welcome aboard, Paul.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And we're here for a couple of reasons. Number one, as the introduction. Secondly, to discuss a transition process involving Mr. Doherty, who's going to be continuing on as working in the commercial aspect of what we do, and assisting Paul and that for some period of time until we decided it's time to move forward just as a more of a sole entity in that position. I know Mr. Denizio has some questions on that. We'll have some input on that. And any questions for Jim as well, going forward or from the board? Certainly happy to accept that, Paul. I'd happy to take those at this time.
Okay, this does not require our approval, but Mr. Hogan, any questions, comments?
No, I have confidence that the members of the assessors who interviewed him and made the decision asked all the right questions. I mean, as much as I love Winthrop, they're not a Burlington. Don't tell them I said that. But I have all the confidence, and I'm not going to sit here and second guess by, throw a gotcha question at you.
Mr. Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, agreed. It's great to meet you. And obviously you went through the process, and it's great that you wanted to be here and that we thought that you were the right fit, which is awesome. I love the idea of a transition. Jim literally is a wealth of knowledge around Burlington, and, to make sure that what's in his head gets in your head in an appropriate time frame, so that it's as smooth as humanly possible, I think is a fantastic idea. I think we should be doing more, knowing the general municipal pool that exists. I think it's super important that, as folks begin to, either move on or retire or what have you, we have folks that can, make that transition nice and easy. So welcome aboard. Thank you for everything that you folks have been doing. And Jim, we're going to keep you for as long as we can, just let you know right now.
Thank you, Nick. Joe?
No, I just want to say welcome aboard. Got some big shoes to fill. Jim's been a mecca in that department down there along with his board, but if there's a question that be asked about it, that's the guy to go to. I'll tell you right now, he's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
Not that that didn't come out good at all, did it?
Right.
Burlington was fortunate, Joe, and Mr. Tigas, that we had West Washburn prior to Jim. And the transition there was smooth, and we're anticipating the same thing here. Burlington's been lucky that they've had these two prior to Paul joining us. So he can, if he's equal to the task, we think he is. Again, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
No pressure, Paul.
No, see me.
Mr. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to congratulate Paul on his appointment to that position there, and welcome him to the town of Burlington. I'm also very pleased to hear that Mr. Doherty will be staying along to assist with that transition. So thank you to all involved.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And the chair just says, yes, Mr. Segman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add that the Board of Assessors has included us in the interview process. John Denizio sat in on the first round when I was out with my illness, and I was fortunate to get back in time to sit in on the second round. And it really is. I know we've been talking to the board a lot. It's really difficult to fill our municipal positions these days. So I feel very fortunate that we're able to find Paul with his assessing experience and from the neighboring town of Arlington. And again, I'll just reiterate the fact that I'm very to know that we'll have Jim Doherty around to assist us with the commercial values as well. But I just wanted to point out that John and I both participated in the interview process as well. And it was very well thought out process.
Thank you, Mr. Segman. Mr. Tierney, just want to say welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the kind words.
Mr. Tigas, man.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Comments before we get.
Sure.
Sorry, I just wanted to add some while we have the Board of Assessors and Paul and Jim here. And just let you know that we've been working closely with Jim and now with Paul and the board on the two bills that are going through legislation right now to try to provide some relief to our senior taxpayers here in town. We talked a little bit about about what those bills were. There's one that was sponsored by our rep, Mr. Ken Gordon, which is very similar to the tax deferral program that exists in every town as it is, but it beefs it up a little by lessening the income and asset limitations, and also in a way that the program is run by the state rather than by the town. So the way the deferral program works now is someone can sign up, and if they qualify, they get a deferment on their taxes when they pay those. When they're due, we hold them in deferral until the home is sold. At that point, when the house changes hands, then you get paid for that, and there's a modest amount of interest that accrues during that. Unfortunately, that program isn't very popular in a lot of places. But this program run by the state would take us out of it, so the taxes would be paid by the state, if you will, and then the deferment would sit with them, and then they would get their money when the property sold. So that's a great bill that's going on, sponsored by Ken Gordon. And then the other bill that we've been tracking is similar to the senior exemption. It changes the rules to allow for that exemption to be linked with circuit breaker as it is, and increases the amounts that you're allowed to give for that exemption. And some towns have gone ahead and done that through home rule petitions and legislation around here. Winchester has done it, North Reading has done it. But what the latest bill that was filed was done by Representative Lipper Garabedian out of Melrose, and that was to make that legislation statewide so that everybody could take advantage of that and not have to file home rule petition. As we said, both of the bills are great. The second one, we just feel like it falls a little bit short in the fact that it doesn't change the income or asset limitations. It doesn't increase them at all. So that's what we've been working with Jim before and Paul with now, is to try to get an idea of what we think is the right amount and go and say, do we need to file our own legislation for this to increase those amounts, or is there a way to merge it with something else? So I know you've heard a little bit about that, but since these guys were here, I wanted to make sure that we thank them for all their work on that.
Thank you, John. Well, in that case, now I want to welcome Kenny. There's 3 Pauls at that table, so that's what I'm going to call this Kenny. Welcome to.
Thank you very much.
Burlington.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Item 382. Approval for plots and cars show on the town common. Mr. Skipoletti. Just identify yourself for the record.
Absolutely. Hi, good evening. My name is Bernie Skipoletti, retired from the Burlington Police Department.
Just want to give us a rundown or?
Absolutely. It's nice to see everybody again. As I think you all know, I retired last year from the Burlington Police Department, and I'm here tonight seeking approval to run an event on the town common on Saturday, June 11th. And the basic rundown of the event I'm looking to run is called Cops and Cars, and it's a classic car show. And members of the police department attend and interact with the car owners as well as the people that are there to look at the cars. The term Cops and Cars is used nationally at very similar events. It's not something we came up with. The show was first run here in Burlington when I was a sergeant with the Burlington Police Department in 2019. And we were looking to do it again in 2020 and 2021, but unfortunately, due to the events that were ongoing, it just couldn't happen. So now that things are opening up a bit, we'd like to try and get back on track and have this show and bring it back to the common.
Thank you, Mr. Skipoletti. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to say Officer Skipoletti, but Bernie, what times?
The
11th at?
It would be the 11th of June. Our goal would be 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
You've done it before, fantastic job. the last time it was up there, a lot of cars came. Everything's the same, nothing's changing, everything, you did a great job last time, it was quite the turnout.
I appreciate that. I followed the exact same guideline as the first time through with no changes.
I'm good.
Since it worked. Thank you.
Joe, Mr. Priest.
Thank you. Do we need to do any additional support in terms of ADA compliant porta potties or anything for the event? We should be good. I'm asking anybody who wants to answer that question.
Well, aren't they using the police department if people need bathrooms, or the fire department?
Well, I do have a question about that.
Okay.
Last time we did use the police department restrooms, were public and open, and obviously ADA compliant, so it worked well. I didn't know if the board was allowing porta potties on the common at all, just to keep them a little closer and to keep people from having to cross the street. If that can't happen or shouldn't happen, the police station is an option that worked.
Mr. Chairman, we can check with the Recreation Department on that. I think that they typically coordinate the porta potties for events of this nature, so.
That'd be great. I only ask, given, the width of the common, if somebody's on, one end, they have to get to the police station and they are handicapped, something of that nature. But otherwise, like Joe said, I think the event's fantastic. And I mean, I'm obviously in support of it, so.
Thank you. I've spoken to Mr. Egan a couple of times about this, so
Oh, great.
I'll make sure whatever his recommendation is, that is followed.
Mr. Hogan.
No, I'm good.
Mr. Runyon.
Thank you.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Bernie, I just want to say I was there the last time, or the first time it was done, and it was phenomenal. It was just, the cars just kept coming, people having a great time. You have to order good weather, again, so.
That's key.
I'm not sure if you mentioned it during the intro, but there's a fee, and that proceeds go, I thought you might want to mention where the proceeds go.
Thank you. It slipped my mind. We charge cars to attend the show, so to have your car at the show, and you can bring any kind of car you want, so we don't discriminate by year or make or anything like that. So if you want your car in the show, you can certainly bring it up. It's a $20 fee to get in the show, and as we did last time, the money is donated to people helping people here in Burlington. So we thought that was a good local cause, and nothing is going to change with that. We've reached out to them, and they're happy to partner as well.
Again, it's just a win-win-win event for our town. All right. Yes, Mr. Sagarino.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask, do we need a rain date for this event?
A what?
A rain date?
Yeah, I believe it was put in, but, for the 12th.
In the backup material, I was requesting the 12th, which is the next day, if possible, and Mr. Egan says both dates were available.
Right. So what I'll be looking for is, a motion to approve for the 11th with a rain date of the 12th. But we have to do this by roll call, but I need the motion first.
So moved. Second.
Seconded, moved and seconded. Mr. Morandi,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
and the chair's yes, 500. All set, Bernie.
Thank you all very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it. Thank you.
all right, item 383, discussion and approval for the budget guidelines. Mr. Denizio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to share my screen here. This is all because I made fun of Selectman Morandi for not being able to handle his machine.
Funny you somehow.
With the internet.
Chisel on a stone, I'll get it in there sooner or later.
Okay, well. Let me stop sharing and try to share again.
All right, Paul, we're going back to big boards. We need big boards printed of everything.
Hurts. That hurts. I know you can see it, I just can't change the. Okay, well, I'll just have to do it manually. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So just to talk a little bit about the budget guidelines, we had the budget summit on January 19th. I'm going to share some slides with you. Selectman, Chairman Tigas and Vice Chair Priest were able to join us, along with the finance team, the Chair and Vice Chair of Ways and Means, and the school committees, Selectman Subcommittee, and the school's finance and leadership team. So that's an annual event. We call it the guideline setting. We talk about revenue forecasts, we talk about expenses, we talk about sustainability, and we come out of there with a consensus operating budget increase. And then everybody takes it to their board and we vote on it. So just want to quickly go over the slides that we discussed at that meeting. First thing we usually do is talk a little bit about where we are, from the last guidelines meeting. When we started this time last year, we left the guidelines meeting with our marching orders. We went through the budget process and met those guidelines. We came up to tax rate time, and this is what that resulted in. You can see the rate for the residential, for the commercial industrial, the average single-family value, and the tax bill, and what the increase was. So that's sort of where we've been. We talked a little bit about property values. We spent a long time last year talking about this. We had both Mr. Assessor Doherty and Mr. Giannino in to talk a little bit about what could happen. We were worried about what was going to happen with the commercial values, mostly. And just as a reminder, the tax bills for this year would be based on values for calendar 2020. So what happened in this current year was the residential. Anybody that follows that in town here knows that market still remains very strong. Burlington is a highly desired place for people to come and live, and the values and the sales prices show that. In the commercial and industrial sector, which is where we had a lot of our conversation last year, there still were some large transactions. Some of these segments were affected a little bit differently, but investment continues in that class, and overall, there was a slight increase, rather than what we had hoped wouldn't happen was a big decrease. Along with the values, we move on to just kind of give the financial indicators. What did we start this year with? So there's our free cash number, our stabilization amount, and the excess levy capacity. That's basically the untaxed amount. That's the difference of what we tax on the levy and what we are allowed to tax on the levy. So those are key indicators that tell you, where your growth can be, how much you can afford to grow. We talk every year about our budget goals. We want to maintain a level of services where possible, prioritize investment in infrastructure. We always want to try to minimize fees where we can, and adjust for our long-term liabilities. We talk a lot about our OPEB liability and our pension liability. We next moved on to revenues, and we spend a lot of time talking about revenues. In local government, there's three main sources of revenue. We talk about them here quite a bit. It's local receipts, state aid, and the tax levy. And that's pretty much predominantly where we get our dollars here. For local receipts, we've level funded that projection going into 2022. We do have some encouraging data for the first 2 quarters of 2022. The meals tax and permits are outpacing projections and are doing great. The hotel and motel is still hit pretty hard, which we expected and planned for that. So we're projecting a modest increase for FY23. So as I sat here last year, I didn't think we'd be projecting an increase for a while. In fact, we had just cut $2.1 million out of our local receipts budget. So this is pretty good news. There's reason for optimism there. Move on to state aid. State aid represents about $10 million of our budget, so it's not a huge percentage, but every bit helps. This has been held harmless throughout the pandemic, and really for
last many years. The pandemic holding harmless was mostly due to backfilling with federal revenues, with COVID funds that the state would get. We expect to see the governor's budget Wednesday, and the leaked news is that they expect a 2.7% revenue growth, which typically translates to about the same in state aid. What will probably happen is there'll be a typical minimum per student increase in Chapter 70, and then government aid will probably grow with what the revenue projections grow. So we're estimating a normal, what our 3 and 5 year increases have been for that category. The next and biggest category is the tax levy, which, last year the entire burden of the increase in the operating or in our total spending was borne by the tax levy because we weren't anticipating any increases in the other 2 areas. So we're with some increases in those other areas, hopefully it'll take a little bit of the heat off of this. And we expect that we'll land, in the area where the select board has asked us to aim in the 4 to 5% range increase on the levy. As you know, last year we had a 4.83% increase on the levy, and that translated to about $264 to the average single family. So we just talked about that. So what did that all come down to? Given the uncertainty going into next year, all of our labor contracts expire at the end of this year. Given the uncertainty in that area, the administration was recommending a 3.5 increase for both the school and the town's operating budget. We expect the accommodated or fixed accounts, the undistributed accounts, these are the accounts like health insurance, debt, pension, the ones that if you were to apply them to each department, you either wouldn't be able to do it, or it would be a huge burden for that department. So we expect those accounts to grow by about just under 6%, maybe 5.75%. And our recommendation was 3.5% increase on the operating budgets, expecting the levy to grow about 4.7%. So comfortably within that range that we were aiming at. After some discussions with the group, the group felt like that the school department wouldn't be able to make their mission at 3.5, that they might need another a quarter of a percent. So the recommendation of the group after that, so that was same uncertainty that we have in the town with they have expired labor contract, that's this year. So they don't have a contract for their teachers union this year. So they have the same issues we have going into next year. So the recommendation of the group was for an operating budget for the school department of 3.75, and for the town of 3.5. And as you can see, that will land the levy estimate to around what it was this year, just over 4.8%. So I know I went pretty fast, but I know you guys have heard some of this before, so happy to have any questions, and if Mr. Sagarino or
Mr. Sagarino? Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Budget Guidelines Summit is a process that was developed in the town a long time ago. The process for defining how much the town will spend next year is not really well defined in any of our governing documents. So thus, in an effort to provide a comprehensive approach, this meeting is held every year just to try to get some sort of consensus among the groups as to what we should spend next year. We have quite a few independently elected bodies here in town. Imagine if each of them was moving forward with a different budget and different guidelines, different parameters. It would be pandemonium for the Ways and Means Committee, and it would also be pandemonium for town meeting to try to sort through all that. So, it's been said before, and I think it really holds true, that the Budget Summit, and I know that many of you have participated in it in previous years, everybody sort of walks away a little bit unhappy from that discussion, but at the end of the day, we have a, consolidated approach, one budget for the town to consider, and all parties in general agreement, although a little bit unhappy with the results is typically the case. And it was very similar process to most years. I thank everybody who was at the meeting for their professionalism and courtesy, and it was a very good meeting. And again, the goal is to try to create one budget document as opposed to quite a few documents that could be if everybody went in their own direction. And I think we were successful again this year to accomplish that. And, we look forward to moving this through the process. These guidelines will need to be voted by the Ways and Means Committee as well as the school committee as well. And we have our treasurer collector, Gary Giannino, here as well, if the board has any questions as relates to property taxes, and John and myself here to answer anything that wasn't clear also.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. I'll start with Mr. Runyon.
No questions, Jim.
Okay. Mr. Morandi?
No questions.
Mr. Priest?
A couple questions. Shocker, I know, but we're doing good on time. John, quick question. I know that during the height of the pandemic, OPEB was kind of put on hold. Is that coming off hold, or, I didn't ask you this question earlier, I completely forgot. What's kind of the deal with that?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at one point, we decreased the amount we were going to make for in our appropriation for that year. But you may remember when we set the budget for FY '22, at that town meeting, we made up the amount from free cash that we had decreased the budget and fully funded for this year. So we're all caught up.
Great.
The deposits have been made. Mr. Giannino has stopped coming to my office and banging on the door every day asking for it. So we're caught up.
Excellent, okay. I guess my other thing wasn't even a question, it's more of a statement. It was nice to see, coming out of the conversation this year, more equality between town and schools. I think that we're kind of, as we look at, what our economic development department is aiming to do, and, we're looking at the eventual downsizing or decrease in office space and what that's gonna become, having more, an equitable share of the funds between town and school side, I think is gonna allow the town to advance on projects that we may not have been able to do so before. And I hope that moving forward, we can have, that same or even more equity between that shared, financial strain. But anyways, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Hogan?
Do we have a schedule for the departments to be coming to us to present their budgets?
Yes, we haven't developed the select board schedule yet, but Whitney and her team have developed a schedule for Ways and Means, and we will build the select board schedule around that. We like the select board, we would like you to chime in on the budgets that report through the town administrator first before they go to town meeting. So we'll be having that shortly.
Okay, thank you.
What's that, Bob?
Yep.
Just a quick follow-up. Yeah, Paul, you mentioned that people come away unhappy, but they come away, I think it was a phenomenal meeting. It really was, because you have all the chairman and vice chairs of all the key players in town. You might come away unhappy, but you come away educated. And to me, that's a way the town leadership comes together to go forward in a united way. So knowing that what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it across the board, so everybody's on the same page. So yeah, it does make some people unhappy, but you know what? I think it's vital and it's necessary to continue that concept.
I agree, Mr. Chairman, and I think it's been said before, that to compromise, everybody walks away a little bit unhappy with the end result, so.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the budget guidelines as presented.
Make a motion to approve budget guidelines.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hogan. Roll call vote. Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Morandi?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
And the chair's yes, 5-0-0. Thank you, John. Okay, moving on. Gary, thank you for attending.
Quite welcome.
Should have put this at the end of the agenda just to have you hang around. But. Okay, item 384. Approval of communication plan. Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before COVID, I was trying to get some traction on this, and of course, the pandemic halted
a lot of the things that we've been trying to do, because we went into a very reactive mode, trying to ensure the financial stability of the community, which it's great to hear that, things are improving at an even faster rate than what we had projected. And so that being said, late summer, early fall, I re-engaged conversations, got John and Whitney involved because Whitney had obtained a grant for communications, which was fantastic, and reached out to the Collins Center, and we're working with them for the fall and the winter before the holiday break to come to a consensus around how we can kind of approach what a communications plan could look like. And the whole point of this, just to remind everybody, is that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, it was television, radio, and the newspaper, and it was easy to get a hold of people because everyone knew where to look. Now there's an almost infinite place to look, and things are cropping up even faster. I attended the MMA's opening speaker note or keynote virtual the other day, and they were saying that in the last, I think it was 7 years alone, over 15 to 16 different applications have popped up for people to ingest and consume media of all kinds, and it's not slowing down. So how do we get a hold of people? How do we keep our residents as informed, as educated as possible? Obviously, our departments are already doing a fantastic job of running Facebook pages and making information as really available as possible. We thankfully in town have BCAT, which runs B News, and folks can opt into that. But from a town perspective, I was hoping that we could take a step back and do a little bit of research to just make sure that we're pointing in the right direction, make sure we're not missing any opportunities, and really make sure that we're getting our message out there and that folks can communicate back with us. So the summary of the communications plan, I'm just going to take a moment here, is really, and I'm just going to read from here. This is more for education of folks watching than it is for you folks here at the dais. The work proposed here would answer several overarching questions. What do the town's internal and external communications efforts currently look like, and how well do they work? What steps should the town take to improve internal communications? How do people in Burlington receive communications from the town? What steps should the town take to ensure that people are able to receive communication from the town and interact with the town in the most effective and efficient ways possible? The Collins Center, and I agree, proposed a two-phase approach, the first of which would be a general inventory and assessment of all townwide communication efforts and capacity, along with any recommendations, improvements for our own internal communications, as well as a phase two, which would be research into how residents best receive communications from the town, along with recommendations for external communications. This whole thing, once kicked off, would take about 10 months to complete, with around the I think it was the 3 or 4 month, I'm trying to get to the timeline here, but around the 6 month mark, we would receive the draft report for at least phase one. And then we would move into phase two. And so with that, I open it to questions and hope to have your support in moving this forward.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Runyon, any questions?
Nick, you mentioned Whitney was able to obtain a grant for, is that for a portion or is that for the entire study?
It's a great question, Mike. So it's broken down. Phase one was $10,000, phase two, $25,000, and the grant was for $15,000. So we'd be able to fund the first phase and a portion of the second, and then the remaining 20, we're working with John and Paul and Whitney to try and figure out, how we're going to come about that, or if we need to go to town meeting for that.
Okay, all right, wonderful, thank you.
Anything else, Mike?
No, all set.
Okay, Mr. Moran,
No, I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hogan?
I think the Collins Center is a great resource for all the cities and towns. But will we have an opportunity to meet with them and speak with them here or virtually to hear them say what you just told us or ask additional questions about, all of this? And is that, kind of thing possible also?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike from the Collins Center has been fantastic in terms of communication. So if we want to set up a meeting ahead of the kickoff, the whole thing is centered around transparency, and they want to conduct interviews with us and town clerk and just a whole bunch of,
That's on the whole list, yeah.
So I think there's plenty of opportunity for conversation from now to kickoff, and then from kickoff and moving forward the process.
Well, I think contact and putting names and faces together for them as well as us helps the process, because if we're not talking to each other, then where's the communication?
Right, exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Sort of a kickoff to the kickoff.
Right.
Okay. Nick, I just want to thank you for doing all the legwork on this, because I know this was one of your priorities, and it seems like it's finally coming to fruition, and I know the board wants to thank you for all your efforts on this, but,
Thank you.
with that being said, we need to approve this, as presented. I'll need a roll call vote, but I need the motion first.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, moved by Joe,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Hogan. Okay. Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Morandi, Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
and the chair's a yes, 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Agenda item 385 is approval of town meeting warrant articles. I'm gonna ask Mr. Sagarino to guide us through these, because some of these are applicable to us, some are not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will request that the board vote on certain items, and of course, as a board, you may decide to vote on any items that you wish to provide the board's opinion on. But there's a couple that we definitely need. The first two are zoning articles, number 2 and number 3. Those are initiatives put together by Melissa Tintakis in conjunction with Kristen Kazner for the planning department. I can run through, depending upon, do you want me to give a description, or have you already read the material?
We always vote on the financial articles. Well, most of the time, we vote on financial articles.
Yep.
Typically, we sometimes do, sometimes we don't vote on zoning, but maybe if you can give a clarification why we're voting on 2 and 3, because of the economic development side of the article.
Correct. These are efforts of Melissa working out of our office in conjunction with Kristen over in planning. So we would ask the board support for both of these initiatives.
Okay, just want to clarify because of the roll call vote situation. Can we vote these in as a group under roll call, or do they have to be voted individually?
Why don't we run through them, and
Okay.
then if the board wants to take them as a group, we can do with that. If there's any items that a board member would like to set aside for further discussion or a separate vote, we can also do that.
Okay, with regards to zoning Article 2, or warrant Article 2, any questions regarding that, Joe?
No.
Nick?
I wanted to say that I think that it's a great idea in terms of, again, like I was saying earlier, as we look to, replace office space with other things, we have to get in front of it. And this is one of those proactive measures that really helps us moving down the road, so that we're not trying to backpedal as, businesses and corporations look to try to come here. So I'm in favor of that.
Mr. Hogan?
No, I'm good.
Mr. Runyon?
No, I'm fine with both of them, Jim.
Thank you. Article 3, Mr. Priest?
No.
Mr. Hogan? And Mr. Runyon already said he's fine with it. Okay, moving on to Article 6, financial articles. Mr. Sagarino, do you want to give a little description on those?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, most of these are very typical articles for us in January. Once we have the certified free cash for the town, we typically add an additional $100,000 to the reserve fund. That's a fund that is under the control of the Ways and Means Committee, and it's for unforeseen events that may happen for the rest of the year. If something happened and we needed funding, we could go to the Ways and Means Committee for some quick funding without having to call a town meeting. So it's essentially a rainy day or emergency fund under the control of Ways and Means. So start out the year with $200,000, and historically, over the past 16 or 17 years, we always add $100,000 in January.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Mr. Hogan, any questions on Article 6?
Nope, got it.
Mr. Priest?
No.
Randy? Mr. Runyon?
No questions.
Okay, no questions on that either from the chair. Article 7,
Article 7, Mr. Chairman, as the board is aware, the board had approved, as part of the MWRA funding project, we had proposed that water rate increases would total approximately $10 a year total on the average family over the next 10 years in order to pay for the MWRA project. In keeping with that promise to town meeting, the additional water revenue that we've been collecting for the MWRA project, because of the way municipal finance works, it's general fund revenue, so it comes in through the ordinary course of all other water receipts, and it becomes part of our free cash. And at this point, what we're trying to do is move that proportion of the water that related to the water increases for the MWRA and set it aside in a special fund so that we can use it to pay for the cost of the MWRA project. So we've done this for the past several years, and we will continue to do it for years into the future as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Any questions, Joe? Nick?
No.
Bob?
Nope.
Michael, any questions on that one?
No, sir.
And I have none either. Mr. Sagarino, the next article.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next article is transfer from free cash to stabilization. At town meeting in September, we utilized $150,000 worth of stabilization funds because that was always available to fund the interest on the Macy's settlement. We just decided as a team, the treasurer had requested that we take the opportunity to replace that $150,000 that we utilized in September. So this will make the stabilization fund whole after that appropriation for September. $150,000.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Joe?
No.
Nick?
No.
Bob?
Nope.
Michael?
No.
Okay, and I have none either. Article 9.
Article 9 is a transportation infrastructure fund. And John, pay attention to my response here in case you need to chime in. But these are the funds that the town gets annually for rideshare fees from the Commonwealth, get turned over to the town. They come in and we're able to utilize them for the purposes in the warrant. And were they earmarked for anything in particular this time, John?
Yes, for the same as last year for the LIFT pilot program.
So we'll take the funds and we'll transfer them to support the rideshare program that we're running over at the COA for our residents in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Joe? Nick?
No.
Bob?
Not on this, but in your final report today, and I won't take it up here, could you give us just a very short update on how that program is going?
Yes, we can even, we can invite Ms. Yetman to the future meeting as well for
Could we do that?
in-depth
that's a good idea.
Okay,
update.
all right,
But it's catching on. The ride levels have increased substantially since the pandemic sort of calmed. Unfortunately, we rolled it out right at the beginning of the pandemic, and, you know, at the time, I think it was, people didn't want to get into a car with other people, but the numbers are very encouraging, so
Okay.
we can bring Marge in for
that's a good idea.
a full update for the board.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Number 10.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Runyon, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no questions.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Mr. Sagarino, number 10.
Number 10, previously, when our economic development director, Melissa Tatakos, came on board, we had appropriated, town meeting had appropriated $35,000 for an economic development study, just to sort of give her a roadmap as to where she should begin when you come into a new job that's never been, have never had here in town. It would just give her some guidance on where she should start to focus her efforts. Obviously, she also started right at the beginning of the pandemic, so we feel as though that she was able to redirect her energy as needed through the pandemic and was able to sort of figure out a lot of the roadmap of what she needed to do, sort of trial by fire. As a result of that, we did not, and as a result of the fact that she was able to secure funding from Mass Development for the 128 Mall Road Future Initiative that we've had 2 public sessions on already. And she feels as though that project is very similar and will give us a roadmap for the future for that development area. And what she's asking us to do, asking town meeting to do, is to repurpose those funds towards our website and business-focused website and communications program there. And that is also going very well. I know you guys have seen a demo of bringmetoburlington.com. It's getting a lot of traffic. The analytics are coming in, and these funds will allow us to provide some enhancements to that website. What they're you know, one of the things that we've, get is feedback on what people are looking for when they go to that website. And, you know, we want to try to make some enhancements, to fill in any of the gaps that the people who are actually visiting the website and searching the website, things that may be missing that they think is, that we want to, add to the website so that, you know, we can have what people are looking for on there. You know, in particular, and this one is a little bit trickier than we would imagine, but, you know, people are looking for available space. So that sounds kind of simple, but to keep it updated in real time, you know, how would we go about doing that? You know, just collecting the information for what type of commercial space is here in town and for people that are looking. It's seems kind of simple, but it's not as easy as it sounds from a technological standpoint. So that's a summary of that article. Pre-existing funds, not additional tax revenue, already been appropriated. Just want to change the purpose of those funds.
Mr. Runyon, any questions on Article number 10?
No questions, Jim, but I would like to say I think that's a terrific investment for the community, and I would wholeheartedly support that article.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Mr. Hogan?
I'm good.
Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, this is in addition to the economic development portion of the budget?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I think that, you know, working with Melissa on the initial kickoff of the website, we were definitely hemming and hawing over how much to include, and, you know, when we were gonna launch the site, it was coming down to, you know, either, you know, aiming for perfection the first go-around or getting it out into the world. And it's great to hear that metrics are coming in so that we can adapt in the right way and not waste resources and efforts, you know, picking and choosing the wrong, you know, avenues that people really aren't interested in. So this is great.
Thank you, Nick. Joe? No. Okay, I have no questions. And Mr. Sarino, on numbers 11 and 12, can you just define the difference and whether both of these are applicable to the board?
I can make it real easy. We actually, the school department and our council and our town council looked into it. They both felt that we only needed one of these articles to proceed. So number 12 will be withdrawn. What this request is will satisfy the next step on the Fox Hill School Building Program. I'm sure many of you have heard there's I don't want to call it controversy, but there's some difficulties with the new Fox Hill School in terms of classroom sizes and what the state will allow us to build there, and that's still being determined. What I learned about this, I saw Dr. Conti at Capital Budget Committee the other night, so I haven't been in tune with all the meetings. John has been attending the school building committee meetings, but what Dr. Conti said the other evening was this will not bind the town to either path going forward. It's simply to meet a deadline to allow us to proceed and have the conversation with the MSBA about the Fox Hill School. So it's for $1.5 million as a borrow, and again, my understanding from Dr. Conti's description the other night is it does not determine one way or the other whether we're going to build the school with or without MSBA assistance. It's just the next step to help us move forward and continue the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Mr. Runyon, any questions on Article number 11? 12 was withdrawn.
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Morandi?
No.
Nick?
So I'm over clarifying here. So we need a feasibility study one way or the other, and this money can be used for that regardless of the specific wording of the article.
Yes.
Is it true that the state needs us to take the 1.5 as like a show of good faith, essentially?
John, I believe the state is looking for the town's commitment to the project with this vote.
Correct.
If you can, I don't know
So
if
we,
you can
so we
clarify.
wouldn't move, this is a box we need to check in order to move forward in the process with them. So if we decide that we are gonna move forward, we need to have taken this vote and approved this money to show the commitment that the town does support or at least the town supports going to the next level and doing a feasibility study to show that the project is needed.
Sure. And then assuming that a feasibility study doesn't cost 1.5 million, the money just gets returned?
Yeah, if we weren't gonna go with this MSBA,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think we would probably need much, much less.
Okay.
We would borrow less.
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Bob, any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Seeing the fact that we've discussed the articles applicable to this board, unless anybody has any objections, I'd be looking for a motion to support Articles 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. If anybody wants to make that motion, and then we do it as a roll call vote for all of those articles.
So moved. Second.
It's moved and seconded to vote in, to take a vote whether to support or not support Articles 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Morandi?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
And the chair's a yes on all of those.
Thank you.
500, okay. Next item, the agenda is approval. I'm looking only for approval of the minutes of November 22nd, 2021, and December 13th, 2021. Just those two, we're looking for approval.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in oh, sorry. Almost got it. Almost got through the whole thing without doing it.
Except the last one. I didn't
Mr.
kick it on the
Morandi.
table this time. Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
And the chair's a yes. 500 for the meeting minutes of November 22nd, 2021, and December 13th, 2021. Okay, subcommittee reports. Joe, anything?
Nothing.
Mr. Priest?
So just a quick update, Transportation Committee is going really well. We're starting to get our feet under us in terms of having really smart discussions and absorbing not just the, town meetings committee's final report, but pushing forward and attending new, talks and seminars and conversations around all things transportation. And I believe they're gonna be doing a short report at town meeting, so you'll hear more there. But just as a quick update, things are going really well. And the same with DEI. I don't believe they're doing a town meeting report, but they are looking to come before us in February for a quick update, initial recommendations. We've heard enough from economic development tonight. Things are going really, really strong. I'm very, very, thrilled with the department overall and the actions that we're getting in front of. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you.
Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, just one quick thing. The MMA's annual town report contest recognizes outstanding reports based on criteria that include visual appeal, material arrangement, presentation of statistics and data, summary of the year's achievements, evidence of local planning for the future, and the report's practical utility. For the fourth time in the last several years, we have finished in third place. 1 and 2 have had a number of communities win over the last few years, but we've been consistently getting on board and being noticed, and third place is still darn good. So for the 4 years that we were doing it, when Betty came in and became the administrative assistant to the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen, 2016, 17, 18, and 20, we have received acknowledgement from the MMA. So I want to congratulate Betty and Lynn, who was part of this this past year, for all the work they did in putting it together. It is a very important document for people to read, and I hope people take the time to go online or to get a hard copy and go through it and see what the town has accomplished and what the different departments have done. So I want to congratulate Betty for all of the success she's had doing this. And now Lynn was in on this with her, and it's Lynn's now to, so the pressure's on Lynn to either move up to 2 and 1. But, it's very proud to be able to say that, we've got a document that's worthy of being acknowledged as third place for the state, for all the communities, all the towns who participate.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, and you probably may have this in your subcommittee reports, but I did want to offer my condolences to the family of Frank Nardone, retired police department detective for many, many years. And I believe, speaking for all of us, he was a good friend to all the members of this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Yeah, Frank was truly
One of the
one of
best.
the best.
I had the pleasure of working with him for, oh God, probably close to 20 years, and well-known in the department, well-known in the area, and just a professional through and through. That's it for me, Mr. Sagarino. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of items. As the board knows, we should be at town meeting right now, but unfortunately, town meeting was postponed to February 16th at 7 o'clock. I just want to let the viewers at home and the board know that Town Moderator Bill Byer, Town Clerk Amy Warfield, and Representative Gordon are working very, very hard to get legislation passed that would allow us to have a virtual town meeting, a hybrid town meeting for those that want to do virtual versus those that want to do live. So we're hopeful that we'll have a resolution by the 16th. And again, thank you very much to them for their efforts. They've been working tirelessly at it for several weeks now. And lastly, I know at the last meeting, I reported that the ambulance meeting that we had scheduled for January 27th for our seniors to sit with ambulance personnel and personnel from Armstrong to discuss ambulance billing was scheduled for January 27th. After discussions with the Board of Health and out of an abundance of caution, we're going to reschedule that to February 24th, 22. Just so hopefully we can have more of our seniors attend that in person and have their questions answered about the ambulance billing process. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. Okay, any old business, new business? Anybody for citizens' time? Nobody in the room, so I'll go out to WebEx for citizens' time. Looks like there's nobody. Okay, in that case, I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, motion to adjourn, I'm sorry. We have to do a roll call. That's right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion to, Mr. Morandi,
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes, I apologize for the inconvenience of coming to you remote tonight.
It's okay. And the chair's yes.
Who said it was an inconvenience?
500, meeting adjourned.